Hello everyone and welcome to StudyTravel TV Live, a show of news, statistics and opinion. I'm Bethan Norris, Senior Editor of StudyTravel Magazine.
Hello everyone, I'm Nicola Hancock, Editor of StudyTravel Magazine. Before we get started, for the best viewing experience, please put the call-in side-by-side speaker view. You will see an icon in the top right corner where you can select the view.
We're delighted to welcome you all today to this episode of StudyTravel TV Live. In today's broadcast, we'll start with a news story and then we'll be joined by our guest this week, Oscar Porras, Managing Director of Midleton School in Spain and President of Spanish Agency Association Aseproce, and Rachel Lindsey, Director of Public Affairs and Operations at Languages Canada.
If you have any questions for the presenters or guest speakers or comments on any of the stories, please do post them in the chat box and we will read them out at the end. A big thank you to the sponsor of this episode, Londonist.
Okay, let's take a look at our first story. StudyTravel Magazine's Global Market Report has been released, showing the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the English language teaching sector worldwide, and the latest data on students, weeks, market share and value.
Total revenue across the main 8 ELT destinations declined by a further 17% to just $2.7 billion in 2021, compared with more than $12 billion in 2014.
There was a total of 277,521 students for the 8 destinations in 2021, a further decline of 27% compared with 2020, and way below the sector peak of around 800,000 students in 2014. There were 2.8 million student weeks delivered last year, down by 29% compared with 2020.
Canada had the highest market share of students at 22%, edging out the traditional top market, the UK, on 21%, while the USA was third with 16%. By student weeks, Canada was top with 28% market share, followed by the USA on 19%, the UK on 18%, and Australia on 17%.
3 destinations, South Africa, Malta and the USA, actually recorded an increase in students in 2021, while Australia and New Zealand, which remained closed for much of last year, had the largest year-on-year decreases compared with 2020.
So at this point, we'd like to introduce our guests for today, Rachel and Oscar. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Brilliant. And we're just waiting for Oscar. There he is. Hello, Oscar.
Hello. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Pleasure. Right. Rachel, not the greatest of circumstances for the sector, but you must be pleased to see Canada at the top of the destination table there in the Global Market Report. So how did Canada manage that? And did Languages Canada play a part?
Mm-hmm. Thanks for the question. And of course, very happy to see that. And it was interesting to see that globally, the decline was about 27%, which actually makes the 12% decline that Canada saw from 2020 to 2021 seem not that bad by comparison. So, I have to say that all of the players in Canada's international education sector have worked very hard to have that during this challenging time, in particular, to have that very high level of student interest and to have that top spot in terms of student interest. I'd say that there was a number of factors at play. On the government front, there were a number of favorable policies during the pandemic that really helped to keep the sector afloat and keep international students engaged and trusting in Canada as a destination. First of all, it was the exemption of international students from Canada's travel ban, those with a study permit. There was, in the early days of the pandemic, access to some of the emergency benefits were actually available to international students who were here as temporary residents in Canada. for those students, not those studying in English or French, but those in degree programs. The government of Canada allowed those students to have they were eligible to bank hours towards their postgraduate work permit while they were studying online. And then also a number of our members on our private membership in particular had access to a number of wage and rent subsidies, which allowed the students to keep open and keep serving students, even if just online. So of course, Languages Canada did have a large role in helping to support our members with safe entry and operations protocols. We actually ran the Study Safe Corridor for a year and a half, which was sort of a one-stop shop for international students to get their all-inclusive safe arrival and quarantine package. And we worked very closely with federal and provincial governments to effectively tell them what our sector needed and what international students needed in order to have the best experience under the circumstances. And then, of course, a big role in helping to tell the world that Canada was open for business when circumstances allowed.
Okay, and bringing us up to date, how is 2022 looking so far for Languages Canada members?
Well, there has been a large pent-up demand for Canada as a destination. So in 2021, we had about 57,000 international students studying English or French at our member programs, which was only about 1/3 of pre-pandemic numbers. According to semi-annual survey data for Q1 and Q2, it looks like we're tracking about 75% of pre-pandemic numbers. So looking at about 110,000 international students in 2022. So not fantastic, but not bad, all things considered. And as I said, we do have that large pent-up demand. So, it's a very positive outlook for our membership. There's been a massive backlog of visas, both in terms of temporary resident visas for short-term students and study permits. So we are working very closely with Canada's Ministry of Citizenship and Immigration to find solutions to address this backlog so that 2023 is not impacted the way that our summer of 2022 was. And I do want to say that Languages Canada has been very proud in 2022 that we were sort of first out of the gate with a number of in-person events, and we've hosted some very successful inbound trade missions with education agents from Brazil, Mexico, and we have one coming up in just a few weeks with education agents from Japan.
Sounds good. And Oscar, where did your clients go last year to study English? Which language destinations will be the winners in the Spanish market this year?
Well, I would say number one was Ireland. I think that there are several factors for that. One of them was obviously Brexit, and also that people saw that more difficult long-term studies in the UK. And I would say that they were very near UK and Canada. UK was higher than Canada, but Canada is really gaining importance in this sector for Spanish students. And I would say number 4 would be the United States, and then finally Malta. That is still like back on track, and I think that is gaining importance little by little. So yeah, but Ireland had like a huge increase compared with last year, and I think that Ireland is becoming more and more popular. So good days for the Irish schools.
Okay, and Oscar, again, whilst this data only refers to English language students, what is interesting is that the number of students travelling to Spain actually rivals Canada and UK for language student numbers in 2021. Did you experience any increase in your Spanish clients going to non-English language destinations?
Yeah, we see that, for example, France and Germany are 2 destinations where the students really put a lot of interest, especially teenagers. I think that like 5-10 years ago, we didn't have that many offer of language programs in other countries, that it wasn't the English-speaking countries. And now there are like several language schools offering very interesting programs for teenagers in other countries like France and Germany, but also Switzerland. Like there are a lot of international camps for students where the students can practice English and also French. So it's a good opportunity. So it seems that there is more interest for these programs these days.
Thanks, Oscar. Okay, let's move on to the next story. Aseproce held its annual workshop in Madrid last week with record attendance of schools, agents and service providers for a day of scheduled business appointments and panel discussions on homestay and online courses.
A panel of industry experts from different sectors and destinations discussed the homestay situation in 2022, expressed hope that supply will increase next year, talked about the minimum standards agents can expect, and the challenges of meeting the one Spanish speaker per household aim.
Maite Mulet of Tech Idiomas, an Aseproce member agency, talked about the situation of agencies, expectations of parents, the need to be precise with what is promised, and how schools and agencies need to collaborate to move forward and find solutions.
Meanwhile, a panel of online providers talked about how this can be a complementary product for agencies and can potentially reach new markets and different types of students. Francisco Javier Sanchez from Spain-based agency Scholar commented on how online options can allow an agency to continue business with year abroad students and can ultimately lead to counselling for university study overseas.
Oscar, it's one thing to hope that homestay supply will increase, but will the fundamental causes of the decrease over the COVID period change, such as people using their spare bedrooms for working from home or the elderly being cautious about COVID and having students in their homes, do you think?
Yeah, well, I hope that things will improve in the near future. I think that what we had the other day was a very interesting panel discussion. And I think it was very honest from some of the educators to say that this idea that we had before about single placements will be difficult to fulfill this next year in summer 2023. It is very likely that some of the schools will be able to offer a higher number of host families, and this is really important because it's a key element for when we send students. But it is still true that the situation has not improved as much as we wanted. And it's true, as you said, that there are a lot of circumstances that they have led to the situation where we are now, like where we have like less host families available for the schools. And I think that possibly we will see a better scenario in a few months. The schools are very hopeful that the situation will improve. I was speaking this morning with a language school in Dublin, and the owner was telling me that they already see more host families that they had before COVID calling the school to say that they will be available in the next few months. And this is really positive because we could be in a situation where language schools wouldn't be able to fill in the school with the students because they don't have enough accommodation for their own students. So I think that yes, that things will change, and things have changed probably more than we expected, and obviously what we lived before COVID, it's not going to be like that anymore, at least in the next year or two. So we need to get used to a different situation. It is true that the expectations that the parents have in Spain are really high regarding single placement, so they don't want to share with another Spanish speaker in the same homestay. And this is something that the schools, they need to be clear about if they are going to be able to provide this or not, so that we can tell the parents. And I suppose this competition between the schools will make a huge difference. And I think that we will see interesting things coming up in the next few months.
Okay, thank you. And Oscar, again, are there any destinations that you expect may have an improved or excellent homestay supply, including those that are not your first choice destinations?
Yeah, I would say, like, as I said before, like, I think that Ireland and the UK, both countries, they will improve their homestay situation next year. So I'm very hopeful about that. And I think that we will see an increase in the number of host families. But I have to say that in other countries, it is happening something similar. Also in Canada and in the United States, that they have also struggled. Rachel will be able to say that probably, that they have a struggle with host families. I think that they see that the situation is getting better. I think that there are other countries with obviously less demand of students, and they can be in a better position. So I suppose that in France, they won't have so many problems, or they won't have so many problems in Germany. It is true that they don't have such a long tradition of hosting like you have in the UK or in Ireland, but it's also like the demand is lower. I think that in the same way that we had like airports really stuck at the beginning of this summer with a lot of people like queuing up for hours in the UK and Ireland, this has also happened to language schools. I think they knew that business would be back, but probably they were not expecting to be back so quickly. So some of the schools, they haven't been able to get ready or to be ready for this load of students. And this has also happened with the host families. I think we were not expecting this business to be back so quickly, and probably we didn't have enough host families for the students. But I think that now that we see the path, and I think that we see that we need to be better ready for next summer.
So, and for Rachel, then, what is the homestay situation in Canada? And do you think that there'll be an improvement in capacity next year?
Well, access to student housing is definitely one of the top challenges for LC members and prospective international students at this moment. And I'd say it's not just homestay. We're hearing university and college members saying that their residences are also full, and rental across the board is much more expensive in Canada than it was even 2 years. So access to off-campus housing is more expensive. And we have fairly high inflation in Canada at the moment. So there's sort of a number of factors, and refer to previous statement about pent-up demand. So a number of factors that are putting a lot of pressure on student housing. We do know that LC members and other student housing organizations that are focused on homestay, like the Canada Homestay Network, are undertaking drives to recruit more homestay families and re-engage homestay families that may have been hesitant to host during the pandemic. And certainly the reasons that you've cited do come into play. That being said, I know that there are a number of individuals who are sort of transitioning back to going into an office environment. So we may see a bit of easing in terms of the pressure to have home offices, dedicated home offices full time. So there may be those families who decide now that it's actually worth their while to repurpose that room back into a bedroom to take on an international student. And so, Canada, we know that international students enrich our institutions and our communities, contribute to addressing our labor shortages, which is also an issue that a challenge for across Canada at this time, and are a big part of our longer term immigration objectives. These are all conversations that are being had at various levels of government. And so, how can we encourage more international students to come to Canada if we don't have a place for them to live? So, I have to say that we're pleased that really for the first time we're seeing government and also other players, investors and whatnot, starting to really talk about housing as a major part of that international education ecosystem. And actually, Languages Canada's Executive Director, Gonzalo Peralta, participated in an event in the Toronto area on this topic a few weeks ago alongside Bonnard, whom we all know, and they're very becoming much more active in the student housing space. So just to say that it is very encouraging to see that it's not just schools that are facing this challenge alone, that it's becoming a broader topic of discussion in Canada, and government is getting involved. So we do hope to see an improvement in the student housing situation in 2023.
Okay, thank you. And with regards to online programs, do you see this as a bonus or a challenge, Oscar? And would you agree with Francisco's point about continuing business with students after a year abroad?
I think it is a bonus. I think it is definitely a bonus. I think that in this sector, we've been very traditional. And I think we've always wanted to have the same kind of programs. And I think that COVID brought us different things. We never thought that we were going to have so many online meetings. If we think back before COVID, we didn't used to have so many meetings in Skype. And well, obviously, I think that saying Skype now, it's a little bit old fashioned. We have to say now Zoom or Teams. So things have changed so much that it seems like a long time ago when we used to have face-to-face meetings. So the same is happening with classes, with tuition. And there are like so many different opportunities for students to do from home. So this doesn't mean that the business, the outbound business will finish here. And I think this is also like a complement, and this can go even parallel to studying abroad. The other day we had our panelists that they were really what they said, it was really interesting, and I think it would be very nice to include these programs in our portfolio. Like they were talking about like teacher training, for example. Like some of the teachers in our respective countries, they don't have time to travel abroad, and I think this is very interesting, honestly, to do that. So I think that there are like a lot of different opportunities. It's a complement, and I think that we need to get used to this. It is true that this brings a lot of expertise, so we need to be really experts. So this is not something that we've been selling for so many years. So we need to learn how to sell this. We need to learn more about the product, but I think that there is really a future with these programs.
Thanks, Oscar. And Rachel, of course, many schools in Canada went online during the pandemic as a necessity. So how many are now offering standalone online courses or online offerings that can complement a face-to-face program?
The transition to online learning in that first half of 2020 was so impressive. I mean, in a matter of weeks, nearly all Languages Canada members made that switch out of necessity. So I do have some data actually to share. I know we all love data. So prior to the pandemic, Languages Canada didn't track mode of delivery in terms of like online versus face-to-face, but we do know that it was quite a small percentage of students learning online only. So in 2020, which of course included a relatively normal first quarter, 60% of students were fully online and 8% were in sort of a hybrid mode. In 2021, it was about 50% learning exclusively online, and that could be whether it was within Canada or outside of Canada, and 20% in a hybrid format. By the first half of 2022, the number of students learning exclusively online was down to only 29%, with only 3 in a hybrid format, and 69% of students, 26% of students online, 3% in hybrid, and almost 70% fully face-to-face. So the bottom line of what that data is telling us is that students really do want that face-to-face. You know, they want to come to Canada, they want to live with Canadian families, make friends in the classroom, live Canadian experience. And so, you know, there is a large demand for a return to that face-to-face. That said, you know, we have had a number of conversations with various government partners and whatnot that are looking to sort of stretch scholarship funding dollars and whatnot. And so to have the option for some kind of virtual delivery of a program is immensely helpful. And you know, we're sure that most LC members will continue to offer online programming to students around the world as sort of a competitive addition to what they're offering in the classroom.
Okay, thank you. Let's take a look at our next story now. And a bit more industry data. UNICEL, the French Association of Agencies and Language Trip Operators, released the results of a survey of 40 members based on the business in the first 8 months of this year, showing some signs of recovery, but differences by subsector.
Overall, camp registrations were only down by 11% compared with 2019, but within that figure, there was a 12% increase in camps in France, while camps overseas were still down by 30%.
Group travel has been slower to recover, however, and remains at only around half of pre-pandemic levels. And groups business to the UK, traditionally the most popular destination for French students, is down by 55% compared with 2019. The association said that the end of ID card travel after Brexit was an added complication on top of COVID travel restrictions.
School trip volumes are also still well below pre-pandemic levels, UNICEF said, although the association is hopeful that these will recover more in the current 2022-23 academic year.
So, Oscar, Spanish agencies operate in a similar area of groups, school trips and mini-stays, but Aseproce doesn't usually release stats like these produced by UNICEF. How have these sectors fared in 2022?
Well, I think little by little, okay, I have to say that normally school groups, they are normally promoted the year before. So it takes like 9 months since the moment that they promote this in the school until the students travel. This time last year, we were like before Omicron or something like that. So we were in a very uncertain time. So schools started to send students, but they were reluctant to make plans with a lot of months in advance. We still have to think that when COVID started, Spain had a big number of groups in language schools in the UK. Some of them, they had to come back. They had to return and they didn't finish their courses. Some others that they were about to travel, they couldn't. So there are still people out there that they were a bit reluctant to send students because there were problems when COVID started. I have to say that most of the language schools in the UK, they were really nice and they were excellent and they were refunding, but there was low percentage of schools that they were not that good and that they were not refunding the money to the students, so they were giving them vouchers and things like that. So that has caused in some cases that Spanish schools here, they are cautious now and they don't want to send as quickly as possible, as quickly as they were doing before, and they are taking time to make up their minds. Having said that, I think that that business is recovering. The short stay groups and the school groups is recovering, and I think that next year things should be quite normal, and we should have like a similar number to what we had in 2019 before COVID.
Great, thank you, Oscar. And Rachel, the proportion of junior students and groups was down for Canada in 2021. So when would you expect that to return to pre-pandemic levels?
Prior to the pandemic, we had seen year-over-year increases in the number of junior students and primarily short-term junior students. It was 13% in 2019 in terms of a proportion of the overall or proportion of learners, and in the first 2 quarters of 2022, that was only 8% of total learners. So I think we will see a return to pre-pandemic level based on pent-up demand, hopefully in summer of 2023. The challenge with this past year was really that backlog of short-term visitor visas for students coming to Canada for those short-term programs. So presuming that we do have the backlog of visas dealt with, which we are expecting, then we're very hopeful for a return to pre-pandemic numbers of short-term junior students next summer.
Okay, and Oscar, ID card travel to the UK was mentioned there, and we know that English UK and other tourism and educational bodies are lobbying hard for a solution. Has this affected group business from Spain, do you think?
No, I don't think so, because like students were already traveling with their passports. So it is compulsory for Spanish minors to travel with their passport, even if they fly to European Union countries, because it is like their parents' permission to travel. So they need their passports to travel. So this hasn't had any effect, and students were already traveling, most of them, with their passports.
Great. And realistically, is the UK the only destination that can accept such large volumes of groups and school trips, Oscar?
Yes, I would say that it would be number one destination that can accept so a big volume or such a big volume of school groups. I would say that also Ireland, it is very competitive in price and conditions. So I think that both countries are the preferred destinations for this business. Absolutely.
Okay, and we'll take one last story. We'll finish with a roundup of some of the latest developments in the study travel sector. In Canada, the Global University Systems Group has received approval to open and operate a new university in Niagara Falls from 2024.
While in the UK, Alpadia has added a new location in London to its summer junior portfolio for 2023. The London Waldingham campus is set at a boarding school in 700 acres of grounds and becomes the 15th summer location across Europe for Alpadia, which is part of the Kaplan International Languages Group.
And in Australia, Greenwich College has opened a new campus in Brisbane in partnership with Cero Institute, adding to existing campuses in Sydney and Melbourne.
Rachel, is this all a sign of confidence in the market, do you think? Are you expecting international student numbers to increase in Canada in 2023? I know you've already alluded to that, but is this due to competitive and attractive government policies that Canada has currently?
Well, I guess, first of all, with regard to the new GUS campus in Niagara, congratulations to Cindy McLeod, who's the CEO of GUS Canada, and her team. And I really can't wait to see that beautiful campus. For anyone who's seen the university that they built in downtown Vancouver, it's stunning. So very excited to see that new campus. I mean, certainly this does point to that large pent-up demand and, international students recognizing the high quality of education across the board here in Canada, the cost competitiveness, and certainly, the government of Canada continues to work with the sector to put attractive policies in place for students who are coming to Canada to study in degree or diploma level programs. The government of Canada recently announced that they would lift the restriction on the number of hours that international students can work off campus per week while they're studying, which obviously allows students to, to fund their studies and stay longer. And there's going to be a revamp of Canada's international education strategy and a relaunch in the new year. So certainly, it's the government of Canada's constantly evaluating how to make the Canada more attractive and to make that experience for international students that much more rewarding. So yes, absolutely, we expect to see those numbers increasing into 2023, and presuming again that we have a return to normal visa processing by that time, but we do expect that.
Fantastic. Okay. And Oscar, how are things on the agency side? Are there still the same number of agencies in the market in Spain as before the pandemic? And are there any new players emerging into the market?
Well, there are always new players in Spain. Like, Spain is a very fragmented market. Like, we've got a lot of agencies, different sizes, and well, I have to say that with COVID, a few closed, not many. Not many. I think that they all went to banks to get funded, and I think that most of them they could survive thanks to that. What we have in Spain is a lot of agencies that they are not regulated. This is people that they work from home, and now more these days where parents don't need so much to meet in person. And but it's true that we have a lot of agencies that they are not regulated, that they are not travel agencies, which is something compulsory in Spain to run this business, and that they don't pay VAT, which is also compulsory. And it's obviously unfair competition. This is something that we've been saying for years and years. So what we see now is that obviously some close, a few agencies close, but we still have a lot of small, let's call them cowboys, out there, like doing business that they don't represent a lot, each of them, but that when we put them all together, they represent a percentage of this business in Spain. So from Aseproce, we want all them to work with the same cards, and we help them, and we provide the information to run this business in according to the law.
Great, thank you, Oscar. Okay, well, that brings us up to date with all of the stories this week. So at this point, we'll open up to the audience to see if there are any questions for our guests or the StudyTravel team. These can be on any of the stories or topics we have discussed. So I did see a question pop up during one of the stories, going back towards the start when we were talking about homestay providers, from Juan Wenzel. Mentioned that Canada Homestay, but there are other providers. He said in Spain, we have the feeling that the quality of homestays is going down. So does Languages Canada, so direct to you, Rachel, have any quality control over this? And if not, any plans to check standards of homestay going forward?
So the Languages Canada Quality Assurance Framework and standard, which is the compliance with which is mandatory for accreditation and membership in the association, does include a whole section on oversight of homestay for those LC members who offer that to students. So there's all kinds of requirements in terms of ensuring suitability of homestay accommodations for students. So Languages Canada members are held to a certain standard when it comes to provision of homestay.
Great, thank you. Thank you for answering that.
Nicola, I just wanted to add something very quickly, and it is that we were talking about this the other day at the Aseproce workshop. It is true that because of the low number of host families in certain destinations, I'm talking about most of the English-speaking countries, what we have seen is that this quality, as Juanma was saying, has gone down, and that obviously schools were really desperate to get host families for the students, so they were probably not checking as much as they were doing before the homestays. So this is a big concern for the agencies, because this obviously has an impact on the image of the agency, and this is something that we are worried about. This is something that came up last week at the Aseproce workshop in this panel discussion that we talk about homestays.
Okay.
Understandable.
Great. I don't know if there's any more in the chat there about it. Oh, I don't think so. But I mean, going forward, Rachel, you've got your event next year, which I'm glad to be coming to in Halifax. But what's on the agenda? I know that you guys have a theme each year. What's the theme for 2023?
Languages Canada's 2023 conference will be at the end of February in beautiful Halifax on the east coast of Canada. And our theme is community coast to coast. It's really about coming together and looking to the future, rebuilding together. And absolutely, the issue of student housing and homestays in particular will be a topic of conversation, as well as looking at, the role of how we can work better with communities and government in terms of addressing labor shortages. I mentioned that Canada has a new international education strategy that will be launched, so we're hoping to engage in some dialogue around that, and the role where English and French language education sit within that broader international education ecosystem. Community is also about the duty of care that we have to international students, and incorporating them into our community and how they enrich our own communities. So there's it'll be quite a broad slate of topics, and stay tuned on the Languages Canada website, and follow us on LinkedIn and whatnot, and we'll be posting updates as the program unfolds. And Oscar, you're always welcome to come.
Oh
Come
my
and
God.
join Nicola at the karaoke bar.
I was here waiting, not saying anything, waiting for you to invite me to that. I was very quiet, like a good kid.
Please do.
Thank you very much, Rachel.
And if not, I will be definitely doing a report following up on all those homestay issues as well. So don't worry.
Okay, thank you.
And Oscar, what's on the agenda for Aseproce next year?
Well, we've got a lot of things. This year, I think it was very good because we launched an online course for group leaders. This is something that we've wanted to do for many years, and like training from each agency was different for group leaders traveling with groups, and we thought that we needed to have something better that we could all use. So what we did is to bring people from all the agencies. We made like a lot of 21 or 22 different units with different things, from like documents that the students need to travel, information about visas, first aid kit, things like that. And we made it online. We launched this in May, and we had, I think, like something like 60 or 70 group leaders completing this course, which was not many, but because we launched it quite late. But we are hoping that for next year we will have most of the group leaders from the Aseproce agencies completing this online course. So we hope to be in Alfi Malaga as well in next January. And we will be busy working on different projects that we have going on at the moment. We have also with the UK Embassy a couple of meetings before Christmas to talk about this problem with homestays that I was speaking before. And we also met recently the American ambassador here in Madrid to tell her a little bit our concerns about the visa situation in Spain, because it takes a lot of time to get an appointment for a student visa, for the J1 visa, and so we keep quite a close communication with most of the embassies, and they are giving us like support when we need it, and we are chasing them when we need their help. So we do quite a lot of things.
Busy. Everyone's busy. That's good to hear. Okay, that looks like it's the end of our audience Q&A, which brings us to the end of this week's Study Travel TV Live.
Our next episode will be on Wednesday, the 16th of November at the same time of 4 p.m. GMT. Visit the Study Travel TV Live page on Study Travel Network, which you can find under the magazine section in the menu, where we'll be announcing the guest speakers for the next broadcast, as well as a recording of this episode and past episodes.
So that's it for today. We'd like to say a big thank you to our special guests. Rachel, thank you for your time and insights today.
Thank you so much for having me again. It's been a pleasure.
And Oscar, thank you for joining us again and sharing your thoughts. We look forward to seeing you all again soon.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be part of this. So thank you very much for inviting me.
And thank you, of course, to our main sponsor this week, Londonist. And thanks to all of you for watching. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.